Hi again. It's I guess time for me to make another video. You know, if you've seen my other video or two videos that I made, you know how I hate doing this. But I first of all, I wanted to start off by thanking all of you, really, for all of the support. I have gone through the messages or the comments on my last YouTube video from the dream I had, and it's just inspiring and makes me feel good that there's so many people out there that relate with me for so many reasons. And I don't know, but thank you so much for all of your support. So I was thinking I'm gonna make this video about my past. So this is because I know the very first video I made over a year ago was disappointing. I mean, I was actually disappointed in myself, and it, you know, I myself was disappointed in it because it led to nothing, and it was just almost like a teaser, and I didn't mean for that to be that way. I just mainly am scared because I don't want to mislead people or to glorify the devil with what I'm telling you. So I want to be careful how I say everything, really. But so this is kind of my testimony of how, you know, well, it's part of my everything. It's part of my whole life. It was my life. And then, you know, it's ultimately what led me to be truly saved. So just a little bit of a background. I was raised Catholic. I am not Catholic now, but I was raised Catholic, and thank God. I think that having that background grounded me. I always believed in God, the biblical God, and Jesus. Now I twisted it. I had twisted my belief so that I could basically be and do what I wanted to do. And I had tricked myself into thinking that everything that had happened to me was because it was a gift from God, which is crazy. But so just a little background. The paranormal things in my life started happening really when I was 9, when we moved to a new house with my family. When I was 9 years old, that house is where I started experiencing, first it was feelings of dread, feelings of not being alone, and there was something dark, like a very evil presence there. But then it moved to actual, you know, tangible things happening. One of the very first things, aside from the feelings, that I remember was I had this it was kind of like a bookshelf. My uncle made it for me. So it was probably 4.5 feet tall, and it had multiple, like, kind of cubby holes on the shelf. There was 3 levels, but I had this box. It was just a small, like maybe a square foot box, and it was only maybe 4 inches tall on the sides. And in that box, I had just little toys, marbles and stuff. And I was laying on the floor, and it was broad daylight. I was laying next to my shelf. I had to go to gymnastics, so I came home and was tired and laid back on the floor. And I watched that box float out from the top shelf. It floated out, like, and then it turned over. The contents of the box dumped onto my floor. Then the box fell. And I told my parents, and they didn't believe me, and they told me, you know, well, they said it was my imagination, that kind of stuff, and I almost had to believe it because I didn't know what else to believe. But then I would hear cabinet doors in the bathroom, you know, opening and closing through the night, and I knew it wasn't a person. Also, one of the things was my bed would vibrate. But it was like a vibration, and it wasn't like the washer or the dryer. I remember holding my breath, you know, to try to be as still as possible to see if that was, you know, just my breathing maybe causing it, but it wasn't. And then I had scissors fly across the room in front of people. Thank God this happened in front of my friend, because she saw it and I didn't, you know, it was validated. It was validating to be, you know, not to feel like I was crazy. But I had, you know, back in the day, it was, we had stereo systems, and I'm sure some of you guys will remember this, but the antennas, they made these flexible antennas for a while that I think you were supposed to pin them to your walls, but I didn't. I just left mine laying on the floor. And in front of friends a couple of times, they stood up side by side and moved around before they fell to the floor. So those were just some of the few very first, that's just the very, very beginning. Those are the things that happened that got me interested in the paranormal. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to know who it was, because it just started all the questions. And then as I got older, became a teenager, I started playing a little bit here and there because I never owned one, but my friends had a Ouija board and we would do that and, responses, and it was really scary. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will say that every place I've ever lived until this house, every apartment I lived in, every place I've experienced multiple things. It's like they found me. I could feel it. I could feel it before things would happen. I would know if there was something around. I guess there were people that called me a medium, and I'm not going to lie. I was looking for it. I was trying to find it. I seeked it out. I went to places that were reputably haunted, and, it was intriguing to me, to say the least, and it ended up becoming an obsession for a very, very long time. When the ghost shows started coming out, like in the early 2000s, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names of shows, but the very first Ghost Hunters people, when that show came out, it was thrilling to me, and I couldn't get enough of it. And then more and more people started making their own shows, and it got big. And that's all I watched. I mean, if it was on and I could find one, that's all I watched. That and horror movies was terrible. And my kids, I feel terrible because maybe in the way back dark, recesses of my mind, I knew it wasn't right. But that's what I watched with my kids. That's what we did, because they experienced it too. And when I lived in the house, I bought a house and I lived there for 15 years. And that house was where a lot of things happened, and it got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where I had to call professionals to come in. My own home was the one place that I didn't do anything to try to attract stuff. Like, I didn't do any recordings. I didn't try to catch any, what's it called? When you can catch them talking on tape. I can't believe it's a good thing I don't remember that stuff anymore, but it was just awful. But it got to the point where we were all sleeping in the same bedroom because there were things flying around every day. Like, the remote would be sitting on top of the TV back before we had a flat screen. It would go flying across the room. There would be growling, just random growling. We'd be sitting on the couch watching a movie, and between the two of us, whether it was my daughter or my husband, because it happened so frequently that it was multiple people, but there would be a growl right between our ears, right here. We were being scratched. You could make a series of horror movies out of the activity that happened in our home. We had professionals come out, and I tried everything. I did smudging a lot. I did a lot of smudging, and I would walk around and pray. When I did it, I would say the Lord's Prayer. I would say everything. I would go from room to room. I did exactly what the people told me to do. I had this one lady come in, and she was a witch, really, and she did a crystal grid of my property, placing crystals on each corner of the property on the outside, and then on each corner of the house outside. We would see black shadows every single day flying around the house, and they move fast, really fast. I saw 2 different little boys, or what was showing itself as little boys. I doubt that there's any little kid spirits on the earth. I doubt everything that I thought now. Everything that I ever thought before. I just know that, Satan definitely masquerades as whatever he wants to, an angel of light or a kid or whatever he knows that he can grab your attention with and that will intrigue you to dive deeper down that hole, he's going to do. But it was bad. I had a brand new box of wine glasses that, well, they weren't brand new. One of my clients had given them to me. And I had emptied a shelf in my cabinets in my kitchen. And I started putting the glasses, the very first one, I took it out and I put it all the way back on the shelf in the cabinet. And the moment I looked down to grab another glass, that glass flew out of the cabinet and shattered on the wall. And again, I am giving you guys the very minimal things that happened to me. On Easter, I'll tell you this story. On Easter Sunday one year, my kids went to their dad's, my ex-husband, and they came home from their dad's and they came into my bedroom. It was nighttime and they were showing me their Easter baskets. And the moment my daughter walked into the room, I had a bookshelf in my closet. Well, not a bookshelf, a shelf. It was a shelf above my clothes hangers, rack or whatever where you hang your clothes. And on that shelf, I had multiple books and they were pushed all the way back against the wall. So there was a lot of space in between the books and the end of the shelf. And there were 3 items that flew off the shelf that night. One was a book called Just Like Jesus that a friend had given to me, a neighbor and a friend. It was actually a New Age book about angel activity and communicating with the angels and stuff. That was up there. And then I had this portrait of Jesus. It was a Catholic thing that was given to my father when his father passed away. And it was just a portrait of Jesus, and on the back of it was a prayer, a Catholic prayer, and it had been on the back of that picture frame for, 50 years. It'd been a long time since he died. He died before I was ever adopted by them. And those 3 items that weren't all together flew out of my closet and hit my daughter on Easter Sunday. And that was the turning point, because we were living in fear. I loved the fear in a sick way, but I didn't love it in my house. But I took that portrait of Jesus and I hung it on the wall right then. And was like, that was the turning point. That was when I got angry. And I will tell you, the next morning, that was at night, my husband and I went to sleep. My husband and I have been together 14 years, by the way, and he never believed in any of this stuff until he got with me and he saw it for himself. Multiple things happened in front of him and to him that made him a believer. But we hung that picture on the wall and went to sleep. And the next morning, the prayer that had been on the back of that portrait, I had to have been glued in some way, it wasn't loose or frayed around the edges. The next morning, we woke up and that prayer was shredded. Shredded into tiny little pieces like that big, all over the floor. And the picture was still hanging on the wall. And it looked like the edges of each piece almost looked like they were chewed by something. And, this was high up on my wall. A mouse didn't climb up the wall, somehow leave the picture intact on the wall, and peel the prayer that was the same size as the frame off of the back of the thing, and then chew the entire thing up. What would be the point of that? There's no animal that would do that. It's not food. Anyway, it was shredded into pieces all over the floor. I had multiple, like I said, countless things happen to me. I saw entities, entire entities, a man, 2 kids. I saw a woman, and that was just the things that you could actually totally see. And that little black shadow would fly around my bedroom every night, fast. Like it almost looked like figure 8 sometimes. It was crazy. And I would tell my husband, and he would always, he's one of those kinds of people that he puts his head on the pillow and he's out like a light. Well, it was so funny that night, this particular night I'm speaking of, we were laying in bed and I said to him, I am not saying that something is going to happen tonight, but I feel something big. I'm not, that's what I said. I said, I'm not saying it's paranormal, but I feel like something is going to happen. Well, it was shortly after I said that, maybe 5 minutes at the most. It had gotten to the point where when I saw the shadow flying around the room, I never told him anymore because he never saw it. And he was always asleep, but I had seen it come in and I'd seen it flying around. And I looked at him because he started rubbing his eyes really weird, and he would look again, he'd rub his eyes, and he said, "Baby, I don't know if it's just my eyes, but I think I'm seeing the shadow." And right when he said that, I said, "It just flew in front of the mirror." And he's like, "Yes, And it was at that moment that he was like, oh my gosh, there really is a shadow flying around the room. That specific night, there was like, when you walked into our bedroom, I just lived in a tiny house back then. When you walked into the bedroom door, you faced a wall immediately, and that wall was just a little, square, because that's where my closet wall was built. Well, that area that was just, like a 3-foot by 3-foot little area between the door and the wall of the closet, and then the opposite wall, the wall of the bedroom, the whole area from the floor to the ceiling turned black. Like this shadow grew and swelled, and the entire little section there turned black, and then it dissipated. Then it was like outside the door, and you could see the light in from above the door and below the door when the door was closed, And all of a sudden, we saw something blocking the light at the top of the door outside the door. There was something moving around that high up on the outside, but not on the bottom. And we saw that too, but multiple things happened that night. And, but from the moment I hung that picture of Jesus on the wall, things started slowing down, because at that point it was a nightmare. I mean, we were living in a nightmare every day, everything. Like, one person advised me to open up the Bible and set it on a shelf. And I feel like this is kind of witchy, but to open up the Bible, prop it open with something, and set it on the shelf open facing the front door. So I did that. The moment I put that Bible, opened it up, propped it up, it was on this little shelf. It was definitely standing there. And I had this big candle, like glass candle holder, sitting in between the pages in front of the Bible so that it would be propped there. The moment I set it up, made sure it was standing, made sure it looked great, and I turned around to walk away, I heard a thunk right behind me, and I looked behind me, and that Bible flew off that shelf and was laying right by my feet. And that was, there's another train, sorry guys. But I mean, it had flown across the room to reach that far to hit the floor right there. But anyway, from the time I put the Jesus picture on the wall, things slowed down a lot. It went from every day, all day long, to, every other day, to every few days. And then that was about the time that I started kind of questioning my intentions, what I was doing, if it was really wrong, because I always prayed. I mean, I had what I thought was sort of a relationship with God. I mean, I prayed all the time, but it wasn't right. I wasn't really saved yet. It was like a Catholic thing, and I wasn't Catholic practicing, hadn't been for really ever. I mean, my parents forced me to go to church when I was a kid, but I just had my feet grounded in my belief. What I was doing was really occulty and witchy. I mean, I was talking to the dead. I was looking for it. I went places and did the ghost hunting. I had an EMF detector. I had, a lot of tools. Electronic voice phenomena, EVP. That's what I was thinking of before. But, I caught multiple stuff like that. I went looking for it. I hung out in graveyards. I was so dark and obsessed with it. Obsessed with death. And I started questioning if what I was doing was wrong. And like I said, I always believed in God and Jesus. I believed in the Bible, but not really. And I would say things like, it's not that I don't believe the Bible, I just feel like it's, symbolism. I think some of it's true and some of it's symbolic, and just, so stupid. One day I was laying in bed, and I had just said that to somebody. And a couple hours, not just, but a couple hours before that day, I'd said something to somebody about my belief and how I believed. And then I realized while I was praying, it was like God put a thought in my mind. How can you judge the Bible at all when you've never read it? You've never read it. How can you say anything? And it's true. I only knew the basic of basic stories, like the birth of Jesus and Noah's Ark. Basically, that was really it. Never had read it. So that kind of intrigued me. And then I started praying to be humbled. And then I started feeling this guilt, about everything that I had been doing for God. I mean, for 20 years, you know? And then I'll never forget. So I was driving to work, and this is a route that I took every week, one day a week. I go to different places for my job. The same route, I had been going there for years. And there's like it's a highway. It's a Hamilton highway, but it's only two lanes on each side. And I was on that road, and I just cried out to God. I mean, from deep within. It was the first time I think I'd really cried out to God in a humbling way, wanting to be humbled. And I said, God, out loud, while I'm driving, God, if I have it all wrong, if I shouldn't be doing this, and this is wrong, and this is a sin, and I shouldn't be seeking the paranormal and spirits and ghosts, and if I have it all wrong, and the Bible is real, and it's truth. If that's true, give me a sign, and I'll stop. And the moment the words came out of my mouth, in the distance, as I'm driving, there's an orange. I see orange, and as I get closer and closer to it, it's a literal sign. And it's orange, that fluorescent orange, reflective, like, highway sign material, in the shape of a cross that says, Jesus loves you, my dog. What are you doing? Anyway, of course, I was shocked. Tears came to my eyes, but in my mind, just like with the paranormal stuff, I had to I had to think logically. That could be a coincidence, of course, So I said the same prayer again out loud. God, if I have it all wrong, and the Bible is truth, and I shouldn't be doing this stuff, please give me a sign for real. I might have added it like that time because... And again, immediately once the words left my mouth, I saw an orange spot. And as they got closer and closer, it was the same sign in the shape of a cross that said, Jesus loves you. I was like, no way. No, I mean, I drove that road all the time. And I'm telling you, those signs were not there. They had never been there before. And yes, I'm sure somebody put them there. Okay. But that was just too weird for me. 2 signs back to back. And of course, I'm thinking, I knew deep down that it was from God, but I was thinking that it still could be a coincidence. So when I got to my job, I pulled out my EMF detector. I got a base reading, and I said, God, if that was you, this is so wrong. I should not have put him to the test. It's just crazy. I said, if that was you, and you gave me those signs, I want you to make this reading go to, I can't even remember the number, but it was vastly different than the number that was on there. And that EMF detector immediately went to the exact number that I named, the exact number. And as soon as I saw that, and I said, okay, it almost scared me. I said, okay, and it dropped back down to the base reading. And that was it. That's all I needed. That moment, that day, I never watched another ghost hunting show. I just dropped it, and that was huge. Anybody that knew me, that's all I did. That's all I talked about. Day in, day out, every minute of the day. It was like I was obsessed with it. Obsessed. So at that moment, I quit everything. And at this point, we had moved from the other house, the house that I bought, to a farm. And I was managing a 57-horse boarding facility. And I had already had things happening there. And actually, a couple of things that happened there were the scariest things that had ever happened to me, especially after that day when I got the signs. It was like honestly a fight. I felt like a fight for my soul. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's literally what happened. And the big thing that happened to me that made actually it all, once this happened, and it was over after that. I haven't had anything, and I refuse to think about it, or that's why it was really hard for me to make this video. But my dog is like right here, just on top of me. She's an old girl. She's 16. Anyway, so it's really hard for me to talk about it, but I'm going to tell you, and it makes me almost even sick sometimes. It's horrible. And I know it sounds unbelievable, You can choose to believe me or not. I am not crazy. I've never had any issues. I'm even blessed that I don't deal with depression unless it's circumstantial, of course. Never had anything like that, but this was what happened. That last thing that just wouldn't let go. First, like a week before, I was talking to my daughter on the phone, and I had kind of bad reception on the farm, so we were on the phone, and all of a sudden I heard whispering, and I thought it was her. I mean, I didn't think it was anything but her. I thought maybe she had a friend over and she didn't want to be rude to me, so she was whispering to the friend. That was logically what my mind thought. But then I started hearing words, and it was really fast whispering, like that's kind of how it sounded. I know that was silly for me to do, but that's how it sounded. But I started hearing words in these whispers, and they were evil. I don't even want to repeat it, but one of the words was possession. One of the words, anyway. And at this point, I started getting scared because I thought that Lexi was possessed. Shouldn't have said her name, but that's what I thought. And Lexi has experienced a lot of stuff too. Of course, she grew up with me. Countless things have happened. So, and when she was little, she did things that scared me. She used to talk to Bucky when she was 2. She couldn't even form complete sentences. And Bucky, one day she turned and looked at me. I'll never forget this. She was 2 years old. And she said, "Mommy, Bucky died when he was 5.5 years old." So I know that was, totally off subject. Well, not totally off subject, but I just wanted to let you know a little bit of how she was before this. So it wouldn't be shocking. And, the words that I was hearing in the whispering were terrifying. So I'm like, Lexi, I'm screaming her voice. Like, why are you saying that? What's wrong? Why are you saying these things? Lexi, I'm screaming. Freaked out, like crying. I was crying because I was terrified for my daughter and I didn't know what was happening. All of a sudden, Lexi actually is like, "Mom!" She yelled, "Mom!" And I'm like, "Lexi, why were you saying this?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I couldn't hear you. Your stupid phone, went dead again. I thought you were gone." And I'm terrified me. So whatever it was blocked us from hearing each other. And it was speaking to me. It scared me to death. That was about a week, if that, before what happened. So, multiple little things here and there happened. And then the night that this thing happened, it was weird. It was like Satan set up, it affected my husband. So the first thing that happened was we had gone out to eat and we came home. Now my husband, it was a buffet, so he ate a lot. But this isn't something that, we don't do. I've never before and never since has this happened to him. But he was acting weird, really weird. He was like sleepwalking and he was awake. And he was like, eyes were open, walking around the bedroom, talking, not making any sense at all. It was scary. And all my logical mind is like, you must have eaten yourself into a stupor, guy, because seriously, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're freaking me out, but just lay down. So I had him lay down and go to sleep. That night, I laid down, and in my ear, and this was something, it was like weekly happening for a long time, audibly, a voice, and it sounded like a female voice, but it said my name. It said, Angie. Just like that. Now, all the other times it said my name, it was like, Angie, before I went to bed. But this night, it was very creepy. I mean, it was always creepy, but this was different. Well, I went to sleep, and I had a dream. And I know this sounds crazy, but this wasn't just a dream. This is how the thing entered me, was through the dream. I won't even really discuss the dream, except for there was, something dark. We were in a room, and I knew there was like a demon in the room, and I was trying, and I'd never seen my husband scared ever, but in my dream, he was horrified, frozen in fear. And I grabbed him and put him in front of me because he was so scared. He was like hiding behind me. And this is just a dream. Not just a dream, but this is, but he wouldn't do that in real life. But I grabbed him in my dream and I pulled him in front of me. And I was holding on to him with my hands around him. And I sat down on this couch and I pulled him on top of me because I was so scared. I pulled him on top of my lap. And I said, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay." And I started praying the Our Father. And as I was praying the Our Father, it was like my voice quit working and I couldn't get the words out. And my chin like stood still in this dream, but my head tilted back, like, and my mouth opened up wide, and this thing went into my mouth. The black shadow just flew down into my mouth. And I woke up and I was horrified. And when I stood up out of bed, I could feel this thing in me, for real, in real life, awake. I could feel it coursing through all the way to my fingertips and my toes. I woke my husband up, and I'm telling you, he was still in whatever state of mind he was in. Before we went to sleep, he got up, his eyes were open, and he was not with us. It was like he was talking, sleep talking, walking around with his eyes open. He made no sense at all. I didn't understand what to do. I was like I was alone in this, and Satan made sure of it. I mean, he made sure that there was nothing, no one, nothing that I could do, Well, it was Sunday morning, and I got to tell you, the thing that was in me, it was like my thoughts were only half mine. And I don't want to talk about the other things that were in my head, but it was a Sunday morning, and I went to church like I had been. And I walked in the church, and I was sick. I mean, I was fighting throwing up. I tried to worship, and I couldn't. And I finally, even though I knew she was going to think I was crazy, I was going to church with my best friend's mom. My best friend passed away of cancer, and I didn't want her to go to church alone. So that's why I started going to church. But I told her, and luckily she's known me my whole life, so she knew, a lot of what I had been through before I got saved, before the signs. But I told her because I can't describe to you the fear, the terrifying fear, and she tried to pray for me, and I left. I felt so sick. I went home. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. She gave me a couple Bible verses to read, and I had another friend who actually had been through a lot of very similar things, paranormally and evil stuff that was in her house, and oddly, it was right down, only a few houses down from my house. She gave me the same 2 Bible verses. So my husband left the house to go do some work on the farm. And I dropped to my knees at the foot of my bed with the Bible open in front of me. And even though there were these things in my head, I dropped to my knees and I cried and prayed. I was praying, prayers for myself, like things that were just coming out, begging God. And at the same time, reading these Bible verses. I mean, I was desperate. I couldn't even think straight, obviously, because there was something else, but also because of the fear. I know this sounds crazy, but this is what happened. Believe me or don't. While I was praying and reading those Bible verses, the feeling that was in my body, the physical feeling, not just the thoughts, but they pulled out of my limbs. Like I felt it almost, I could kind of describe it as like an electricity feeling that was coursing through my veins, but it was dark. It was a dark type of electricity, and it pulled from my fingertips and my toes and went up my limbs and gathered together in my stomach. Like, it slowly came up out of every part of my body, and it all came together in my stomach. And this happened while I was awake. My stomach felt like it was growing because I guess all of it was gathering there. And then my mouth opened up the same way it did in my dream, and that thing came out of my mouth, which was the same way it went in my dream. It came out of my mouth. I don't want to cry, but it was horrifying. So that really happened to me, and it left then. And after that, that was it. Nothing else after that. It was like the final fight. And since then, I don't mess with anything. I don't watch ghost shows. I don't mess with Halloween at all. I used to love Halloween, but nothing. I do not want to give a second of my time to anything paranormal. And I know this whole story sounds crazy and you didn't get the whole story. And I don't know if I want to give it to you, because I was the person back when I was so obsessed with that stuff that was looking for these stories. I was the one searching and so interested in hearing these stories from people. But I'm telling you that even watching, listening with interest in this kind of stuff attracts more stuff. You're opening yourself up. And I don't know what the truth about this stuff is, okay? I have read the Bible actually from cover to cover a couple of times. Listened to the audio Bible probably. I haven't read the whole book with my eyes. I read it every night, but I listened to the entire Bible twice at least. And I know it talks about spirits and stuff from time to time, talking, but we are not meant to do that. We're not supposed to do that. God despises that. And I don't know if there's spirits on earth or not, and I don't want to know anymore. I thought when you're absent from the body, you're present with the Lord, at least if you're saved. And the souls that aren't, I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. There's no children, spirits here on earth. If they're below the age of accountability and they pass away, why would there be a child on earth? And I know there's probably some mothers that kind of hope for that, hope to be able to connect. Don't be deceived. It's easy to be deceived. But I had the most horrible thing. I'm sure there's probably worse, but I was possessed. I feel stupid saying that. It's a horrible thing to say, but that happened to me. And I don't ever want it to happen to any of you. And if one single person hears my testimony of what happened to me, and it can help one person turn away before it's too late, then I'm doing my job. But the only thing that helped, the only thing that made it all go away for me, was with my heart and soul praying to the Lord, looking to Him humbly. He knew when I came to Him that I was ready and willing to give that up. He knew it. That's why He answered me. And since then, I have a connection, and I've had multiple dreams. I've had things happen to me, and I don't understand why me. Why me? I have done horrible things. Running after the dead for all those years, and not only that, but I've been a good person as far as I've been always loving, caring, and compassionate, but still I've done things to myself, my own body. Why me? Why do I get to have had the things that have happened to me, good, in a good way, happen to me, and not somebody else that deserves it, somebody that's, believed in the right way their whole lives? And I don't know. That's another video, because I have multiple really cool things that I know are from the Lord that have happened, and those are great stories. But anyway, so I think that's about all I want to say, because I don't want to go into detail too much about every single individual paranormal thing that has happened to me, because I don't want to mislead somebody or lead them further down that path. But oh yeah, never finished saying, the only thing that worked was God. Believing God, He can deliver you. You need to put on the full armor of God. If you're struggling and you're trying to get rid of these things, put on the full armor of God. Give it to Him completely. Pray, read your Bible. You got to get rid of it, and He is the only way. He is the only way. Smudging might work for a day or two, maybe even an hour or two. It doesn't work. You're trust needs to be in him. He's the only thing that can deliver you. Wow, this video lasted way longer than I thought it would. It's been almost 40 minutes. That's crazy. It doesn't feel like it. But anyway, I hope I did this the right way. And I'm sure I'm going to have some haters and whatever. But it is what it is. This is me. And that's my story. That's what happened. It's the truth. You don't have to believe me, but I'm not asking you to. I'm just telling you my story. And I hope it can help somebody. God bless you all. And I'm praying for everyone. And I'm not sure how you say this, but is it just Maranatha? Just end it like that? But I'm sure I'll see you all soon. Love ya.